In my gut, I knew something wasn't right. That clinic doctor gave me the wrong diagnosis. It wasn't just going to be a surgery. Now I was going to have chemo. I was going to lose my hair. Our whole life was going to change. Before I was diagnosed, I had no idea that I had cancer growing in my body. Looking back now, I know that there were signs. I was super fatigued all the time, but I was also a full-time mom and running around all over the place and driving kids to activities and whatnot. And so I didn't really think much of it. I had headaches, but that's really not uncommon for me. A lot of the things that I was experiencing weren't really out of the norm, and honestly, they were easily explained away. As a woman, oftentimes, and as a mother, as a busy person, we can explain away our symptoms so readily. One morning, I woke up, I rolled over, I had an itch on my chest, and I went and scratched under my breast, and I was like, that wasn't there before. I don't remember feeling that. I've always been very intuitive with my body and very familiar with my body. And so as soon as I felt it, it was like my heart just sunk. It was almost like I knew immediately that something was wrong. At that time, I did not have health insurance, and it took several months. I knew that I needed to book an appointment. I knew that I needed to get it checked out, but I also knew that as soon as I started that process, that I was going to be opening the floodgates. But I also knew that I needed to act sooner rather than later, especially if it was something scary like cancer, which it was. I know that from when I was in my early 20s and when I was uninsured, that I could access care through Planned Parenthood. And so I was like, that's going to be my first place that I'm going to go. So I was able to get a breast exam. And here in California, they also have a program called Every Woman Counts. And it is an amazing program that I feel honestly saved my life. If you're uninsured, they will connect you with a provider who will do mammograms, biopsies, any kind of gynecological issues that you have that may need kind of monitoring, as well as any issues with your breasts. And so I was referred to a program to get a mammogram. And of course, after getting the mammogram, they were like, we're going to take you into the other room and we're going to go ahead and do a sonogram. You know, I really still didn't think a ton of it. We're going to schedule you to come back and have a biopsy. In my gut, I knew something wasn't right, but I just really wasn't sure what to make of it. I went to the clinic to get my diagnosis. I knew that there was a possibility it could be cancer, but I kept being told every step along the way at every appointment that I went to, you're so young, and most likely this is probably benign, and it's probably just a mass that may need to get removed, but most likely it's not cancer. The statement, you're too young, should never come out of any doctor's mouth, because cancer does not discriminate any kind of cancer. And cancer is no longer just an old person's disease. So when I went into the office to get the news, I remember I was sitting in the room. I went by myself, and the doctor walks in with a paper, and he kind of sits back. He's holding the paper up, and he's like, well, I'm sorry, it's cancer. He said, but the good news is that it's the best case scenario out of the worst case news. And so I said, okay. And he said, my mom had this same kind of breast cancer. He said all she needed was a surgery, and she didn't have to do chemo. She didn't lose her hair. None of that. She's like, so we're going to refer you to a surgical oncologist. So I remember opening up my chart and looking at the results, and I remember reading invasive. I just remember that word like jumped out from the page at me. And so I kind of in the back of my head knew that something was not right. I kind of had a feeling, but I didn't really know why I had that feeling. At that time, I really didn't know anything about breast cancer beyond the fact that I know women get breast cancer. I know men got breast cancer. I knew like breast cancer was a thing, right? But I did not realize that there were different types of breast cancer. And come to find out, I had triple negative breast cancer, which is extremely aggressive. It grows very fast. And so I'm really lucky that even though it did take a few months for me to get the care that I needed and to get to diagnosis, that it happened in enough time before anything had spread in it, before it had gotten worse. Finally get the appointment with the surgical oncologist, and I'm sitting there, and she's amazing. I love her so much. She is explaining everything to me. She's got a printout, she's got notes on there, and she's walking me through different kinds of cancers, different kinds of, treatment options. So she talks about non-invasive ductal carcinoma, and then she moves on and she starts talking about invasive ductal carcinoma. And I'm like, okay, but wait a second. I stopped her and I was like, but the clinic doctor told me that I have that kind of cancer, not this one. And you like kept going. And she's like, oh, he did? She's like, no, I'm sorry. She's like, you have invasive ductal carcinoma. It's triple negative. Your only treatment options are going to be chemo and surgery and potentially radiation and immunotherapy. And at that moment was the hardest moment for me, because it was like finding out I had cancer all over again. And knowing that not only wasn't just going to be a surgery, now I was going to have chemo. I was going to lose my hair. Our whole life was going to change. And now I had to also go home and tell my partner and tell my daughters that actually not best case scenario. Mom has to do chemo and it's not going to be easy, and our life is really going to change. After my diagnosis, which was February 1st, I went in and I had a port placed in my chest for chemo. And then I started chemo. I had 8 rounds of chemo. I also had immunotherapy with every round of chemo. If folks are familiar with the different types of chemo, I was on AC chemo, which is known as the Red Devil, which people know as pretty harsh chemo. I ended up being hospitalized, and it was probably the hardest point of all of my treatment. It was very scary. After that, I was able to finish chemo. I opted for a bilateral mastectomy. So I chose to have both of my breasts removed. I needed to do that for my own peace of mind. I didn't have to do that. I could have opted for a lumpectomy. After my mastectomy is when I found out that I was no evidence of disease and chemo had done its job, and I never had any positive lymph nodes. The chemo got rid of all of the cancer, and so I was really lucky, and I did not have to end up having radiation. Oftentimes, when you get to that no evidence of disease point as a cancer survivor, society, your friends, your family, there's so much celebration because you beat it, right? You beat cancer. You did it. And now you get to go back to your life and forget all about the cancer and move on and live happily ever after. Unfortunately, it does not always go that way for all of us. I am one of those patients who unfortunately has been left with long-term health issues because of cancer treatments. I lost a bunch of weight unexpectedly without trying at all, and I couldn't gain any weight. I also was having upper GI issues, so I was having reflux really bad. I was also having upper respiratory issues and having really bad asthma and shortness of breath and a heavy chest. I have always been a storyteller. Every point in my life, I have shared my story in whatever way that looks like, whether that was being a new mom or homeschooling our daughters or traveling in an RV or whatever it was. I took to the internet and I shared my story and I found my community. So getting diagnosed with cancer, I think in my gut, at my core, I knew that I would probably end up sharing my story. And so I took to TikTok. God, I used to love this hair. And I decided I'm going to make some funny videos about going bald, having to shave my head. When I found the mass in my breast, my hair was down to my waist. I had long, curly, thick hair, and I knew that I was going to cut my hair even before I found out that it was cancer. When I knew I would most likely have to have a surgery, I chopped all my hair off. I went from waist-length hair to a pixie cut because I wanted to be in control of losing my hair. And so I started to share my story. And what I found really quickly was that there were so many people who were going through what I was going through. There were so many people who did not post their own stories, but who would comment on my videos and who would say things like, "Oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one." And it's always been twofold for me, because not only is it helping someone else to feel less alone because they see my story and they're like, wow, I thought I was the only one who felt like that. But it's also for me because I'm looking for someone to say, yeah, me too. I get it. I know what you're feeling. I know what you're going through. There were friendships that I would not have had otherwise.
You go.
Best day possible!
And that's a very complicated thing because nobody wants to go through cancer. If I had it to do all over again, would I want to go through chemo and find out I had cancer? No, not really. But I also have some of the most beautiful, long-lasting friendships and relationships that I wouldn't have otherwise. I remember Alyssa and I found each other through TikTok. And of course, we were immediately drawn to each other. She had the most magnetic personality ever, and we just clicked almost immediately. And that was kind of the beginning of the depths of our friendship that we had. And we exchanged phone numbers, and we just built an undeniable bond. And when things started to turn for her and we knew that things were not going to be good, and I knew how much the TikTok community had meant to her. So I told her, if at any point you need someone to update the community on your behalf, I'll do that for you.
Thank you so much for checking in on Liz. I've been getting lots and lots of comments like these and lots of messages.
Hey pals, just popping in for a quick update on our friend Liz. Today's December 20th. I know that it's been quite a while since I have shared an update with you all on Liz, and to be honest, that's just because there's really not a whole lot to share. I know how much it means to you, and I know that you want to keep people informed and you want to see this through until the very end, and that you want to tell your story, and you've let people in to some of the most intimate details of your life from the very beginning of your diagnosis, and she wanted to continue that till the end. There were days after that she passed, and trying to share information about her services, trying to share information about the organization that she wanted funds to be donated to in her name. And it was really challenging because I was navigating my own loss and my own heartbreak, with also the heartbreak that the whole community was feeling, with the heartbreak that her family and her close friends were going through. I am sure that if you are following me for updates on Liz, that you have probably heard the news by now that she won. She's no longer suffering. She's no longer in pain. And she is on to the next life and to her next adventure. People will say to me, I could never do what you do. I could never tell my story so publicly. I could never be so vulnerable. How do you do it? What I find is that even in the hesitation, if you want to tell your story, you never know who's listening. You never know who you can impact through telling your story. And for the people who do not want to tell their story, even for people like that, I say you still need community. You still need to at least have someone who can understand what you're going through, because it will make a world of a difference in your experience to have someone who can relate to what you've gone through. And I think for me, that's why social media is such an amazing place for this type of community, because you can connect with folks who have been through what you've been through without having to be too vulnerable